The data that you get doesn't always have to come from online information. So for example, with loyalty cards, you can link people's in-person activities to their online activity as well, and work out how they bought and see whether they looked online before they bought in person. These are always, this is all the data, these are all, as well as things like emails and usernames and passwords. These are all sorts of other bits of data that you can get about people. And if it was my job, if I'd been tasked with increasing personalisation of display ads, then I could use all of this data to help personalise those ads. In reality, you're restricted by the amount of time that you have in order to put this into action. And then it's about negotiating and saying, well, if I have more people or a better platform, then I can make ads as personalised as Netflix. It's all about resources, really, and negotiating those resources. But for you, it's important that you know that this data is available and that you can get it, or to say operationally that things need to change to be able to gather this data. As digital marketeers, if you have the time to do it, or the resources that will do it for you, then these are sort of key things that you need to gather. So, in different parts of the world, there are different regulations surrounding data. So, in the UK, for example, we have a thing called GDPR, which I'm not going to go into much, but basically there's loads and loads of rules that pretty much everyone working at a company has to do lots of training courses on GDPR, because it's the consequences for getting it wrong with people's data, losing it, having a data breach, are massive. It can mean massive fines, it can mean jail time, so it's hugely important. So not everywhere has the same, so I'm not going to go into detail about what those regulations are. But this is from an Advertising Standards Authority code, and it's just very useful, because some of the things that in the UK we're required to do by law are actually just things that make customers trust the business more. So they are just good guidelines to go by. So these are some of the key ones, which are, for a start, the marketing mustn't be persistent. You can kind of have those ads following people around, but if you're also sending them an email every day, trying to sell them stuff, if it's just relentless, people are going to get very, very annoyed, and they're going to either unsubscribe, which is fine, it's not great for you, it doesn't really have a huge impact, but worse, they could mark it as junk mail, which does have a wider impact on the business. So this is a rule in the UK, but also just good practice everywhere else. When you are collecting data, it must be overt. That means you must be open about it. It must be obvious to the consumer that you are collecting their data. Don't be taking it without their knowledge. So that's just going to help your business be more trusted by the consumers. So getting consent to collect that data. So if someone enters a competition, for example, and you're giving over like your name, your email address, sometimes your birthday, things like that, you'll see generally a tick box that says, I consent for you to keep and use this data. Because sometimes when people are entering those competitions, they could easily just think that it's just being used for the competition. So if you are going to keep that data and store it in a customer relationship database or a data management platform, then they need to be able to consent to it. If you don't get that consent, and then they get another communication from you, because, for example, you entered that competition, and then you could get annoyed about it, and that leads to you having negative feelings about the brand. So although in parts of the world this is a legal requirement, it's also just good practice. In terms of withdrawing consent, there needs to be a process by which a customer can go, oh, actually, I realise I gave you permission to use that data, but now I've changed my mind, and I want to withdraw that consent. And I'm going to show you in a moment one of the ways where you can provide that opportunity for them to do it. This video, it's quite a nice little video from Apple. It might work without everyone necessarily being able to hear what it's saying. We'll see. I think my computer just doesn't want to play videos today, so that's fine. Basically, though, Apple have realised they're acting on the fact that people really care about their privacy, so they're using their privacy control features as an actual selling point. Oh, here we go. You can watch it in your own time. Just because it's got quite a lot of sound involved, it's very frustrating not being able to have the sound. But anyway, they have realised how much consumers care about privacy, so they actually use it as a selling point, as a feature of their new phones, to put you in control as a customer. The more and more we realise that our data is out there being used for everything, the more it's being used as an actual selling point by customers. So Apple, as part of that campaign, they expanded their privacy settings and controls. Google have also done the same. Obviously, I mean, I have an Android phone, so I know on Android that you can obviously set for each app whether they're allowed to use your location and things like that. And you as a user decide how much you trust that company to have that data. And it's really nice to have that individual control over it. And you also do weigh up again how beneficial it is to you for them to have that location. For example, location data. Obviously on a Maps app, it's very, very advantageous to you for them to have your location data, whereas for a selling app, unless you get to the point where you're providing like delivery details, you might think, why do they need to know where I am? So again, it's that weighing up whether you're going to give me your data or not. So ethics, it's not just about the sort of the security management of your data. It's also about making customers feel that you are using their data ethically, that you're communicating how you're collecting their data, where it is stored, but also one of the most important things with ethics is how and why you're using that particular bit of data. And I think there has been a change in the level of data that apps, for example, request. They used to kind of request access to everything, and now more and more you will just see them requesting access to the one specific thing that they need for that app to function. And that's kind of how you know that they're more ethical. So as a business, the research shows that customers are more likely to give us their data if we are very open about how we're going to use it. That means they're going to be much more confident about it. So for example, with Netflix, we know that the more data they have about us, the better the service is going to be for us. So again, it's that privacy paradox of how much benefit are you getting from them having our data. And they're quite happy to tell you that. It's a key function of their business. So this is just a website of a shop. Down at the bottom of lots of websites, you'll have a footer that isn't it's often not very well, it's often not sort of a designed part of the website. I mean, it is, but it's not, they don't put a huge amount of effort into making the footer look great, because really it's a place for things like privacy notice and cookie policy, or what those two things say, as well as general information about how to contact them and their careers and things like that. So generally, and this is part of the ability to withdraw consent, you should have a cookie policy or privacy notice on your website. Again, in some parts of the world it's law, in other places it's just generally good business practice. going up and up. It's very distracting. Okay, so what this web page, this cookie policy does is actually specify what cookies are used, their origin. So some of them are, but these ones they've got cookies from Google and Bing, and it says when they expire. It says what they do. So this one's statistical, analytical, page search cookies. And they've got a sentence about why they use each one. It's so clear, it's so transparent, and it makes it much, much easier for you. If you've gone into your browser history, you've cleared everything, you're like, why are all these cookies there? Having a page like this that explains is just very, very good for making sure customers trust you with their data. So that is ethics and data practices. So, data-wise, hopefully you have an understanding of big data and digital marketing, and insights into data management platforms, an overview of security considerations, insight into privacy and ethical data use, an overview of cookies, and then the actual practices of how you prove that your data use is ethical. Let's see. Okay. If you have any questions that I might be able to answer, but say I use the data, gather the data, not totally sure about the technicals of it, and I wish I did. But if there are no questions, I am going to move on to strategy. We'll just take a quick 5-minute break before the next one, where I'm going to restart my computer as well to try and get it to work a bit better.